And now, it's time for another Dice Tower review with Tom Vasel.
We've all heard stories about backstabbing in a dungeon crawling game, maybe Dungeons and Dragons or some other role playing game in which one player backstabs everyone else, or those old role playing games where only the person who got the final hit on the monster got all the experience points. Well, this is a game that exploits all that called Cutthroat Caverns. And the tagline for this says, "Without teamwork, you'll never survive. Without betrayal, you'll never win." And basically, that's the gist of the game. Each player plays a hero, and you're going into a dungeon, fighting monsters together, but at the end of the game, only one person can win. And so players have to work together, or they're not going to survive all the way through the dungeon. But at the same time, they're going to pull every trick in the book to be the one who is the sole victor at the end of the game. Let's look at the game. Well, here are the components for the game. All this comes inside the box. Well, let's take a closer look at how some of this works. At the beginning of the game, each player is going to get one of these heroes. Now, in this game, these heroes are basically all the same thing. It doesn't matter whether you pick the Dwarven Fighter or the Elven Archer, they're all going to be the same. Let's take a closer look. There's background artwork and more, but really, other than that, it's just a hit point tracker. Each player starts with 100 hit points. And they're your typical good guys that you would find in any kind of dungeon crawl. The game centers around this board here, which has two tracks on it. One is the encounter number, which players will use to show which encounter they're on. Players are going to be fighting 9 monsters, and possibly more if there's a tie at the end of the game. But they'll be fighting 9 monsters, and whenever they fight a monster, we'll keep track of the monster's hit points on this chart. Each round of the game, players are going to be fighting different monsters, and there's 25 monsters included in the game. You shuffle them, you'll put 9 of them face down in a pile and draw 1 each round. And the monsters look like this. For example, here's the Ripper, and he has a special ability. Whenever a player is damaged by the Ripper, you lose a card randomly from your hand. Now at the bottom of the card are the stats of the monster. Now these stats vary based on how many people are playing the game. For example, in a 3-player game, the Ripper has 150 hit points. In a 6-player game, the Ripper has 280 hit points. Now, this is important because let's say you're playing a 6-player game and 3 people get killed in the second round. And in the third round, you fight the Ripper. He's still going to be 280 hit points. It doesn't matter that people have died. The hit points of the monsters are equal to the number of people who started the game. So therefore, having people killed off in the very first few rounds is going to be very disadvantageous, not very good to the people who are still in the party. And so you can see here that the Ripper here has 280 hit points in a 6-player game. And also, it mentions who he attacks. He attacks players 2 and 3 for 15 hit points. Now, the game is basically about using cards to fight the monster. At the beginning of each round, players are going to get 7 cards from a deck, or at the beginning of the game, and they'll be using these cards throughout the battles. Each round, they're going to get 1 card back, so if you use more than 1 card, you'll have fewer the next round of the battle, but between battles, you can fill your hand back up to its full 7 card hand. Now, most cards are attacks. Notice this is a 40 attack, and when you play this, you're hitting the enemy for 40 hit points. Now, these cards have different numbers on them, so that, for example, if the 40 is halved for some reason, we just turn it on the side to show that it's now a 20 attack. Or for some reason, it's doubled, now it's an 80 attack. Or maybe sometimes it will even get cut down to 0. And so different attacks have different values, from 40s to 50s to 100s to 20s. Some attack cards will show a picture of another person. And so if you happen to have the character who matches the portrait shown here, this is her special attack. For most people, it's just a 20. For her, though, it's a 40 attack, and no one else can mess with it. There are also a few cards that will do other things. I think he called you ugly, too. So this only does 5 damage to the monster, but you pick someone else who will then become the monster's new target. And then there are other attacks that, for example, slip behind, which will double your next attack. There are also these interrupt cards, basically, which you can play to mess up other players. This makes someone else's attack miss completely, or you have a critical miss. Or basically you have a human shield sticking someone else in front. These are cards that are not going to make other people happy, but you can play them. And then there are cards which are potions. These are placed in front of you, and when you tip them or tilt them, you use them to get either hit points back or some kind of benefit. Several of the potions cure wounds. Like this one gives you 15 life points back when you use it. And in fact, as you notice on the card here, you can use it on someone else. However, they have to accept it. And if you use it on someone else, then you will get a few of these prestige points, which are really valuable. So you'll have the very odd situation of offering to heal someone else and them refusing it because they don't want you to get any points for healing them. That doesn't often happen in a role-playing game, but it happens here, and it's always funny when it does, as you see someone trying to persuade someone else to let me heal you so I can get a few points. So players are fighting the monster by playing these cards, and before each round, players are dealt initiative cards. Now this shows in what order players are going to be fighting in the battle, and which players the monster is going to be attacking. Initiative is very important. As you play your attack cards, everyone plays them face down. You're trying to play yours so that you hurt the monster. You want to help the party out by killing the monster, and if possible, killing it on your turn, therefore getting the points, and not setting someone else up so that they can kill it. So that's why you'll see people playing measly 10 and 5 and sometimes even 0 attacks, just so the next player isn't the one to kill the monster. So this continues throughout the game. The monsters are of various different types, and in fact, this is one thing you should be careful about. The monster artwork can be a little dark. I guess can be is kind of a... kids may not be a big fan of it. They are kind of scary. Most of the monsters are one big monster you fight, but occasionally you'll have things like a wolf pack that you have to fight, and counters are included for these. And so the game continues until you fight 9 monsters. As you look at the board here, you'll notice that as the encounters go by, that the 7th, 8th, and 9th monsters all have extra points added to them. 3 prestige to the 7th and 8th, 5 to the 9th monster. And so at the end of the 9th round, whoever has the most prestige points is the winner of the game. If there's a tie, then you go to the 10th round and continue on until someone finally breaks the tie. And so this keeps the game fresh and interesting. You have 25 different monsters. You'll use only 9 or 10 of them per game. And the way players attack and everything is very interesting, and as they go back and forth, hurting and helping one another. I enjoy Cutthroat Caverns quite a bit. However, I will say, if you have a group of people who take things very personally, this is not the game for you, because this can easily cause fights, because right when you're about to kill the monster, someone else makes you miss. Right when you're about to win the game, someone else trips you up and you die. So if you have people who think that sort of thing's amusing, then this is a fantastic game. Really fun. You'll come out with stories about the game. It kind of takes all the bad and nasty stories of role-playing and puts them together in one little board game. And there's a lot of expansions out for the game. I do wish the characters had special powers. The second expansion fixes that to some degree, but for the most part, there's a lot of variety here. You'll find yourself laughing as you go through this. It takes about an hour and a half, maybe 2 hours to play, but you come out distrusting everyone else that you're playing with, and yet having a good time nonetheless.
Thanks for joining us today. For more written, audio, and video reviews, as well as the #1 board game podcast, check out the website at www.thedicetower.com. Until then, this is Eric Summerer, and you've been watching The Dice Tower.